You're listening to The Pump Fake.
And welcome into the latest edition of the Pump Fake, everybody. Jarrett Bailey here, flying solo on a Monday. The week of training camps opening around the NFL. The vast majority of teams report tomorrow at the time of recording. Again, recording on a Monday, so teams reporting on Tuesday. I want to say there's two teams reporting on Wednesday. I only know that because one of them's the Steelers, but everybody will be reported by the end of this week. Very exciting time. I will be at Steelers camp on the first day on Thursday to get a nice little look at Aaron Rodgers and everybody up close and personal, which is always an exciting time. To be at camps. We got the Hall of Fame game, which is in 9 days. So yeah, things are very quickly heating up. We're getting back to football around the NFL. So very exciting time and a good time to kind of go through and put teams in their respective bubbles ahead of the season. Just kind of rank teams by tiers ahead of the 2025 season. So that's what we're going to be doing today. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening as a podcast, please be sure to follow along and leave a review, whether it be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Please be sure to follow along there, subscribe, do all of that fun stuff. So yeah, let's get started. NFL tier rankings ahead of the 2025 season. We'll start with the obvious, the Super Bowl bubble, which I have narrowed down to 6 teams. Those teams are the Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles, Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, Los Angeles Rams, and I'm putting the Green Bay Packers in as my 6th team. The Chiefs and Eagles need no explanation, especially Kansas City, who's been to the conference championship game and Super Bowl just about every year except for 2 since Patrick Mahomes has been in the NFL. So they're going to be more than likely playing conference championship weekend, as they have been every year since Mahomes became the starter. So there's no reason to rule them out, especially after the last 2 years when everybody's expected them to take a step back and all they've done is get back to the Super Bowl and win one. So this is, if they get back this year and get to their 4th consecutive Super Bowl, I think that it's all but definitively okay to say this is the greatest dynasty in the history of sports. So Kansas City's there. Philadelphia, yes, they've lost players on the defensive side of the ball, but they also have a bunch ready to step in and take on larger roles. So offensively, they're still going to be great with Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and obviously Jalen Hurts distributing the ball to all of these stars. Buffalo, again, the only other team in the AFC that I think worries the Chiefs is the Buffalo Bills. They seem to face off against them almost yearly in a big matchup, and each of those matchups have been decided by one score minus that 2020 AFC Championship game. But each of their last 3 playoff matchups have really come down to the wire. And we know the tale of the tape with these two teams by now. Buffalo usually wins the regular season matchup, but come postseason, 1 or 2 things goes wrong. But when 1 or 2 things go wrong against the Chiefs, that's usually what does you in as a team. So Buffalo's still going to be in this conversation. They bring in Joey Bosa, bring in a horde of new talent on the defensive side of the ball via the draft. Drafted 3 defensive linemen, 3 corners, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, very clearly saying that, okay, the defense has really let us down in the biggest games against Kansas City. That is what needs to improve. That's what we're going to try to improve. They went out and got a bunch of new defenders. We'll see what it does in 2025. Josh Allen, the reigning MVP. You guys know how I feel about Josh. Pound for pound, I think the most talented player in football. It's just a matter of, can he get the help that he needs from the defense to limit the Chiefs and Mahomes once they face off in the playoffs, which again, it feels like will be inevitable. I'm going to put the Ravens in the Super Bowl bubble because roster-wise, they might have the best roster in the NFL. However, if they don't make it to the Super Bowl this year, enough of talking about the Ravens every year. Enough of doing it. Because every year, everybody and their mother puts this team on a pedestal, and every year they get eliminated by Kansas City or Buffalo. And at this point, the pressure has to be on Baltimore, maybe more so than any team in the AFC, any team in the NFL. I know that everybody's going to say Buffalo, but Baltimore, they've been to one AFC title game in the Lamar Jackson era. And Baltimore, in that AFC Championship game, limited the Chiefs to 17 points at home and still couldn't win. Had the Buffalo Bills had the defense to limit the Kansas City Chiefs to 17 points, we're talking about maybe Josh Allen being one of the 5 best quarterbacks of all time right now. He always balls out against Kansas City. It's the defense that has let Buffalo down. The Bills are averaging over 28 points a game against Kansas City in the postseason, and they're 0-4. You had the Kansas City Chiefs at home, held them to under 20 points, and you couldn't win that game. So I'm about done listening to everybody talk about how great the Ravens are this time of year. And they are good. Look, they're going to win 12 games probably. Perhaps win the AFC North again, although they would be the first team since division realignment back in 2001 to win the AFC North 3 consecutive years. No team has ever done that. But they're going to be one of those teams in the regular season that plays great, kicks ass. It's when the calendar flips to January that they really have to prove themselves. And I'm so tired of hearing, oh, Lamar Jackson's the best quarterback in football now. Lamar Jackson has as many playoff wins as Patrick Mahomes has Super Bowl wins. So let's stop with all that nonsense. Until Lamar Jackson can beat Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, for that matter, in a playoff game, he is definitively like the absolute best spot that you can put him at is number 3. And the pressure's on the Ravens to get this thing done because they got a lot of guys that they got to pay. They're already talking about another Lamar extension. This might be the best roster that you can assemble for the rest of Lamar Jackson's prime. So you better get the job done. I'm tired of hearing about him every year, only for them to consistently just lay an egg in January. So put up or shut up in Baltimore. If they don't do it, I don't want to hear another word about them. The Rams, they got better. They were mere plays away from beating Philadelphia in that blizzard that took place in the divisional round. And they add Devontae Adams to an offense that already features Puka Nacua, who's emerged as one of the best receivers in football. Matthew Stafford is still playing at a high level. Kyron Williams in the backfield. Defensively, I have questions about their secondary, but their front seven's very good. I think they'll be a Super Bowl contender in 2025. I'm going to put Green Bay here. Like I said, I'm a big Jordan Love fan. Even while playing on like 1.5 legs last year, he suffered the injury in Brazil week 1 against Philadelphia last year, missed a couple games. And even so, the rest of the year, it was pretty evident that he was still dealing with some lingering issues that came with that injury and still put up really good numbers. I think with a healthy Jordan Love, completely healthy Jordan Love, Edgerrin Cooper going into year 2 on defense, who's already a budding star. And had it not been for Jared Verse having the year that he did, Edgerrin Cooper might have gotten a lot more love for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then you add Matthew Golden into the fold. I think that this is a Packers team and a Packers offense that's going to continue to be really good. Josh Jacobs is still one of the best backs in football. That's a tough division, but it's a division that's seeing Detroit lose both of its coordinators. There's a lot of question marks surrounding the Minnesota Vikings and how good J.J. McCarthy is going to be. And Chicago going through another head coaching change. And while we think that Ben Johnson will be good, we'll touch on that in a little bit. I think that Green Bay has the most carryover of good talent, great head coach in Matt LaFleur, great quarterback in Jordan Love. I think they are going to win the NFC North. And hot take, will be the number 1 seed in the NFC for the playoffs. So that's the Super Bowl bubble. The next bubble is these teams can win a playoff game. And those teams are the Steelers, the Commanders, 49ers, Bengals, Lions, Texans, in no particular order. I know a lot of people will put the Lions maybe in that Super Bowl bubble. So I'm just going to kind of go down the line here. Actually, let's start with Detroit. Many people will put them in the Super Bowl bubble. I won't argue too much with that. But I do think that losing both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn will be consequential. They're also not going to win 15 games again. There are going to be people that are maybe biting their nails as Lions fans saying, man, was 2023 the best shot that we had at this thing? Was 2024 the best shot we had at this thing, and we blew it? So I do have some worries about Detroit. It's still a very good roster, and I think they'll be a playoff team and perhaps will win a playoff game, especially if they face off against the winner of the NFC South. I mean, those are all teams that they can beat. But do I think that they can get to the Super Bowl? I don't necessarily think so. And a lot of that comes back to, again, losing both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, but also seeing Jared Goff perform in the playoffs. Like, I have my trepidations when it comes to Jared Goff. The Texans are kind of in a similar boat where their defense is going to be very good. Offensively, though, what's there that scares you? Nico Collins is very good, but their offensive line is very suspect. After C.J. Stroud was the second most sacked quarterback in the NFL last year, they trade away the only good offensive lineman, Laramie Tunsil. They bring in a bunch of veteran guys that have kind of bounced around the league because they aren't necessarily consistent starting caliber players themselves. So there's going to be a lot of things that C.J. Stroud has to make up for, unless the offensive line does get a little bit better. That's not exactly a high bar. But receiver-wise, no Tank Dell for the foreseeable future. Stephon Diggs went to New England. So outside of Collins, they're really relying on guys like Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel to take steps forward as rookies. And that's a lot to really rely on when it comes to the talent that you have around Stroud. But in an AFC South that's still very suspect, I'm still penciling them in to win that division. And I mean, they've won a playoff game in each of the last 2 years. And if they get back, depending on who they play, they could do it again. Cincinnati, they were a game away from being a playoff team last year. It's just that defense was really bad. It looks like a Trey Hendrickson deal will get done if we're to believe what Mike Brown said on Monday. I would think by default that unit's going to get better because it was really bad last year. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, like that's a hard team to keep out of the postseason 2 years in a row when they're all completely healthy. So I'm going to put them in that group that can win a playoff game. I picked them to win the AFC North, again, just because no team has ever won that division 3 years in a row, and I do see a little bit of a bounce back for the Bengals. So I think they can win a playoff game, but that defense will have to show me something before I can put them up in that Super Bowl caliber tier. The 49ers, easy schedule. If Christian McCaffrey's healthy, I think they'll bounce back in a big way and win more than 6 games for sure. But what do they have passing game wise? They're expecting Ricky Pearsall to take a big leap. Brandon Ayuk has to be healthy and not be making headlines for being dramatic on social media. There's a lot of things that have to go right. And defensively, all of those stewards that were there for the past several years and helping them get to NFC Championship games and Super Bowls are gone. Hufanga's gone. Dre Greenlaw's gone. They've got a lot of guys that have gone elsewhere over the past couple off seasons. And really the only guys left that have been there long-term are Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. And those are two obviously really great players to bring back, but there's not a lot of carryover. I do think bringing Robert Saleh back will help that though. The Commanders, some questions defensively, especially without Dante Fowler. I know that they bring in Von Miller, but how much does he really have left in the tank? Is he more name value than anything at this point? I think that there's a valid argument to be made there. Jaden Daniels is incredible, though. They bring over Deebo Samuel to complement a hopefully soon extended Terry McLaurin. Don't think he's going anywhere, though. I think that Adam Peters and the new ownership group recognize, all right, we've got a really nice window here. We've worked hard to get back to being a relevant team. It would be dumb and really tone deaf of them to not pay Terry McLaurin and not take care of a guy who's been really loyal to that franchise. So I do think something will get done there. But the defense does hold me back when it comes to believing in them as a Super Bowl team. I know that they went on a great run last year. They don't have a definitive number one edge rusher. So that's something to worry about. And then Pittsburgh, this is a team that was in the playoffs last year, got better all over the field, both, at quarterback, at receiver, defensively, they've brought in a lot of new stars. So I think this is a team that will be a wild card team. It just depends on who they draw in terms of the possibility of them ending this playoff skid. So I would love to think that this is the year that they are able to do it, especially with Aaron Rodgers being, coming to Pittsburgh to have his last hoorah, his last ride in Pittsburgh. They just extended TJ Watt as well. Cam Hayward's kind of running out of time, even though he's playing at a high level. But, you bring in Derek Harmon to put on that defensive line, both Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay. in the secondary, and they still have over $32 million in cap space. They can make a couple more moves to get even better. So this is a team that I think will be a playoff team. It's just a matter of, okay, can they get that monkey off their back and end this playoff drought? Time will tell. The next tier, these are teams that could make the playoffs. So I'm not banking on them to make a great run, but I do think that they could be playoff teams. And those teams are, we'll start with the New England Patriots. This is a team that I think is going to make the playoffs. Everything that they've done this offseason has been smart. You know, you hire Mike Vrabel, a proven winner at head coach. You go and get Stephon Diggs, you know, a proven guy who can be your number one receiver for about a year before he starts really declining into like number two receiver territory. And then defensively, Carlton Davis coming over as a free agent, Milton Williams coming over as a free agent, Harold Landry, Robert Spillane. They've done a lot of really good things to improve a roster that needed improved. And Josh McDaniels running the ship on offense. Say what you want to about Josh McDaniels as a head coach, but he's a good offensive coordinator. And I think that New England will, you know, benefit from playing in an AFC East where the Bills are the only real team in that division outside of them. I think that they can ride that to a postseason appearance. The Cardinals, it's very much like, hey, if they don't do it this year in terms of a playoff appearance, why do you hold on to Kyler Murray? So it's a very big prove it year for a lot of people in that building. I think Jonathan Gannon's done a really good job with getting the absolute most out of a roster that's not like star-studded. So credit to him for that. I do think, though, that this is all right, is Kyler our guy year? And if they fail to make the postseason, I think that we see him get moved. Tampa Bay, they've won the NFC South each of the last 5 seasons. So, I mean, they're certainly going to be in the mix. I do think that at some point, having Baker Mayfield have a different offensive coordinator every year will hurt, even though it's within the same system. Like that's, you know, a lot of turnover to go through. And their front seven is old. I like some of the things that they're doing with the secondary, but the front seven does give me a little bit to be concerned about. Over to Atlanta, saying in the same division. A lot of this has to do with Tampa Bay. Like eventually they're not going to win the division. Eventually they're going to take a little bit of a step back and not win 9 or 10 games. So this is also a belief in what I saw in Michael Penix at the tail end of last year. If he can develop a good rapport with Drake London, if Bijan Robinson can take another step in becoming one of these top 3 running backs in football, then yeah, this is an offense that's going to kick a lot of ass this season. Defensively, we're going to find out how much, you know, they can continue to provide. It seems that edge rusher has always been a question with the Falcons. So they do have a lot to answer for this coming season. But if I had to like put my money on who I think will win that division, I'd probably put it on Atlanta. But we'll see. I think it's going to come down to week 18 on who's going to take the NFC South between Atlanta and Tampa Bay. But both of them wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if either of them won the division. Going to put Denver in this category. Defensively, they're going to be a top 5 unit, I would assume. But offensively, how much of a step back is Bo Nix going to take? Because it's almost certain that he will. And there's going to be a bunch of Broncos fans that see this and get after me in my mentions and whatnot. He certainly played a lot better than I expected him to play as a rookie. And I give him immense credit for that. Just comes down to now, is he going to take a huge step back and be Mac Jones? Is the step back that he's going to take going to be, just a slight one? Is he going to play relatively the same, which I think his numbers were a little bit inflated by the job that Sean Payton did last year. And then also on that offense, like it's Cortland Sutton and a bunch of dudes like Devon Vele. They just Pat Bryant. They drafted RJ Harvey. Like it's just a bunch of guys that are taking up roster spots. Evan Ingram. So I think that nobody's going to want to play Denver because that defense is going to be good. But I also don't think anybody's going to be kept awake at night worrying about Bo Nix. I'm going to put Jacksonville in this category as well, which might seem a little bit odd, but the last time that Trevor Lawrence was completely healthy, the Jaguars won the AFC South, won a playoff game, and played really well against Kansas City in Arrowhead. The last 2 years, 2023, they were 8-3 in the number 1 seed. And then Trevor Lawrence sustained a ankle injury and then got concussed and was dealing with a laundry list of injuries in the last month and a half of the season. Jacksonville was still asking him to be Superman, and he was just physically incapable of doing it, and everything around them just collapsed. So if not for an injury that he sustained against Cincinnati, the Jaguars probably make the playoffs that year. And then last year, everybody was just checked out. He gets hurt again. They don't play him the rest of the year, and keep Mac Jones in there. I think that as long as Trevor Lawrence stays healthy, this is a team that can win 9 games. They got better defensively, especially in the secondary, where outside of Tyson Campbell last year, it was just a black hole. And then receiver-wise, we'll see what Travis Hunter brings to complement Brian Thomas. This is a team that it would be hard for them to be worse than what they were last year. As long as Trevor Lawrence stays healthy, I think that they'll win enough games to at least be in the playoff conversation. I'm going to put Dallas in this tier as well. I just don't know what to expect with Brian Schottenheimer. I think I'll be largely like okay. And this is a team that is a little bit patient when it comes to head coaches. So we'll see. Obviously his father was a great head coach in the NFL for a very long time. He's been a coordinator in the NFL for a very long time. This is his first head coaching opportunity. But the offense has potential to be explosive with Dak Prescott, George Pickens, and CeeDee Lamb. So there's a lot to be optimistic about, but we'll see how it carries over in a 17-game season. This is a team that has, drama seems to follow them consistently. What's their run game going to look like to complement that pass game? There's a lot of questions that do need answered with Dallas, but I will put them in this tier of like, we'll see. Or they could make the postseason, but they also could be a team that falls short, and we're, talking about some potential changes being made. I'm going to have a special tier here called I don't know. And the reason that I don't know for a lot of these things is because there's a lot of underlying factors that could either go really great or really poorly. And, some people could say, well, you could say that for just about every team. Sure. But I think once we get into it, you'll kind of realize what I'm talking about, because the first team is the Minnesota Vikings. They won 14 games last year and rolled a lightning bolt in a bottle of Sam Darnold having a great year. And then eventually that bottle got opened in the final month of the year and they fell apart. I don't know how good JJ McCarthy is going to be. That's the big thing. Like, roster-wise, they're very good. But how good's the quarterback? If the quarterback's good, then yeah, they'll be good. If the quarterback isn't good, then their ceiling is going to be very low. It just comes down to how good is McCarthy. I think his floor and ceiling will both be elevated a little bit because of Kevin O'Connell, and he's a great head coach. But not even like Kevin O'Connell can't do all that himself. Like, it's not going to be a situation where, Kevin O'Connell makes JJ McCarthy Patrick Mahomes. Could it be a situation where, similar to Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo, even if JJ McCarthy isn't that great? Sure. We've certainly seen that. But they're just a team where I got to see what it looks like on the field before I can really make a final, justification or classification to put them. So they're going in, I don't know, because I just don't know what JJ McCarthy looks like. The Chicago Bears are also in this tier. Caleb Williams, quietly had a very solid rookie year. Only threw 6 interceptions to 20 touchdowns amidst all the chaos that was going on around him with Matt Eberflus being fired and Shane Waldron and all the reported stuff going on behind the scenes that Shane Waldron wouldn't watch film with Caleb Williams. It just sounds like a very dysfunctional situation in Chicago. And he still found a way to put together a solid year. Offensive line-wise, they completely revamped that unit, so we should have more time to throw. Ben Johnson coming in, we know that he's a great, offensive guru, but is he going to be a good head coach? That's going to be the big determining factor here. So I would like to think that they'll be better. And again, it's not a very high bar for them to clear, but this is going to be a big potential turning point season for the Bears. If it works out, then great. You could have a potential franchise quarterback and a long-term head coach for the first time in quite a while. But again, we don't know, and we won't know for quite a while. And then I'm going to put the Carolina Panthers here. Bryce Young for the last month and a half of the year looked great. Everything around him, though, especially defensively, I just can't buy into and definitively say they'll be good. But because of the way that Bryce Young played, I can't say that they're definitively going to be bad either. So that's a team where Dave Canales, good offensive coach, Ejiro Evero, one of the better defensive coordinators in football, but he doesn't have a lot to work with right now. So some guys are going to really have to play above their skill level this year if the Panthers want to contend in the NFC South. But if Bryce Young plays like he did in the final 7 weeks of 2024, and that carries over into 2025, then they're gonna win some games that they otherwise wouldn't have any business winning. But again, I don't know. And those are the 3 teams in that tier. The rest of these teams, we're gonna start with the mid to bad. The Miami Dolphins. I've said it for the last 3 years. Yeah, this team isn't real. That's great that you can put up 70 against a bad Broncos team at the time. And by the way, what a trajectory both of those teams have taken since that game happened. But defensively, no one scares you in that secondary. No one really scares you on that defense, I don't think. God bless Zach Sealer, but there's nobody there on the Dolphins defense that's going to keep opposing offensive coordinators like shaking at night because they know that they can just throw all over them. And offensively, can Tua stay healthy? And even if he does stay healthy, there's a very clear ceiling on the Dolphins, and it's that they can't play in the cold. And that's a pretty damning factor when you got to go play in Kansas City and Buffalo and Baltimore and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati come playoff time if you do get to the postseason. So there's a very low ceiling on the Dolphins, and frankly speaking, I think it all comes apart this year. I think Tua Tagovailoa is playing elsewhere in 2025. I think Tyreek Hill's playing elsewhere, in 2026. I think Tyreek Hill is playing elsewhere in 2026. I think Mike McDaniel is a senior offensive specialist on a staff in 2026, and I think they do just a full deconstruction and reconstruction during the offseason next year that features a lot of different moves to try something new, because for as much as the Dolphins have been talked about over the last 3 years, they have as many playoff wins as you and I do to show for it. So I've never bought into them, and I think that this is going to be the final year of that experiment. I'm going to put the Raiders here. I like the grown-up moves that they've made. I like that they hired Pete Carroll. I think that trading for Geno Smith, he's a large upgrade over what you had in the likes of Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Outside of that, though, like they have maybe 4 players on that roster that scare you. Like Geno's good. Like Geno is a fine starting quarterback. He's not a top 10 guy. He's a top for like 15 to 17 guy. And again, big upgrade over Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. But there's so many people that overrate him, in my opinion. Like, and I'm not trying to call out anybody. My good friend JP Costa, who's on the show consistently, he ranked him number 9. We talked about the quarterback rankings on this show. You can go watch or listen to that in the podcast feed or YouTube feed. And I told him, like, look, we're going to disagree on this. I know who your number 9 is. Go ahead and tell everybody why he's there. Again, I wholeheartedly disagree. I think for every downfield beauty that Geno Smith throws, he accompanies it with a soul-crushing red zone interception. But again, he is an upgrade over what they had. Ashton Genty should be fun. Brock Bowers is really cool and a very fun tight end. And Max Crosby kicks ass off the edge. Outside of that, name me a player on the Raiders that scares you. You can't. Receiver-wise, Jacoby Myers is fine. He is not an X-factor guy that you stay up all night game planning for. So, especially in that division, like if they played in the AFC South, hey, maybe the Raiders could win that division. They don't. You got to play Patrick Mahomes twice. You got to play Denver's defense twice. You got to play the Chargers twice. We'll get to the Chargers in a minute. So, the Raiders, they'll probably be better than what they've been, but that's a team that I think caps out at 7 wins. I just don't see it with them. I'm going to put the Tennessee Titans in this as well. They'll be better, but that's a low ceiling team. I think the reason that they're not in my final tier is because they have the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward, who I think will be good. Not elite, but I think he'll be a solid, above average, good at times starting quarterback in the NFL. They brought in some guys that I do like. Elick Ayomanor, receiver out of Stanford. I was hoping that my Steelers would draft him. They did not. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. And I think he fits what Tennessee does really well. I mean, he's a big body guy who run blocks his ass off, good downfield target. That's a guy that who could be a potential franchise receiver for them. But again, don't see them winning a ton of games in 2025. I'm going to put Seattle here as well. I don't know what the Seahawks plan was this year. It looked like they were just going to embrace a rebuild. Okay, you trade Geno Smith, fine. Like, makes sense. You kind of reached your ceiling with him. See what you can get in 2026 in terms of a franchise quarterback if you aren't going to win a lot of games in 2025. And then they signed Sam Darnold, and then they signed Cooper Kupp, which doesn't make sense because Jackson Smith and Jigba's there. He's going to be your slot guy. Cooper Kupp's predominantly a slot guy at this point. I just don't know what they're doing. Defensively, they'll probably be pretty solid. Offensively, I don't know what that's going to look like. So, and in an NFC West where the 49ers are going to be better, I think the Rams are going to be awesome. The Cardinals aren't going to be an easy out. They're easily the worst team in that division. So, easy to put the Seattle Seahawks in the mid tier. And those are the 4 teams I put there. The final tier is who effing cares? Who could possibly care to watch or care about these teams? And it's mostly bad teams, which makes sense, but there is one team in here that isn't going to be horrible. They're not going to be, drafting top 5. I just can't be bothered to care about them. And we're going to start off this tier with the Los Angeles Chargers. I just don't know what the Chargers have done to make me care. Offensively, they are built like it is 1966. They signed Najee Harris, who, by the way, is going to start this year on the PUP list because of a fireworks accident. And instead of drafting another receiver for Justin Herbert, one of the better throwers of the football in the game, who the Chargers continue to manually neuter, they draft another running back, and Amarian Hampton. So now it's Ladd McConkey. They signed Mike Williams. He retired. Trey Harris, who they took on day 2. Like, what about that offense scares you? Herbert's good. I'm not putting him in the top 5 anymore because he hasn't won a playoff game yet. And last year, when he had the opportunity to, in a game that the Texans were begging the Chargers to win, he couldn't do it. And John Harbaugh's a fine coach, but again, he's stuck in the past, stuck in his ways. And Greg Roman is an offensive coordinator who, if it was 1997, hey, they'd probably win a lot of meaningful games, but it's not. You can't run the ball 35 times a game and expect to win. And some folks will say, oh, what about the Philadelphia Eagles? Well, the Eagles, they are able to beat you both on the ground and through the air. And a lot of times, they'll beat you in the air in the first half, get a comfortable lead, and then come the second half, they're able to utilize Saquon Barkley more and get a bunch of first downs and kill the clock with the ground game. The Eagles can beat you both ways. The Chargers can't. The Chargers can barely beat you one way. So I just can't be bothered to care about the Los Angeles Chargers. They could be a team that gets into the wild card again, but they're not going to go far. So they're in the who effing cares. The rest of these teams more than likely going to be bad. The New Orleans Saints, I think, are going to end up with the number 1 overall pick. Nothing on that team excites me whatsoever. The New York Giants, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jackson Dart. Good luck. None of those quarterbacks excite me. Malik Neighbors is great, but what do you have outside of him offensively that's going to worry defenses? And look, their front 4 should be very good. Abdul Carter, coming off the edge with Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence. Like, that's a very good defensive line. But outside of that, the Giants have nothing that remotely scares you. The Jets are in here too. I'd like to think that Aaron Glenn is a good hire. I said the same thing about Robert Saleh, though. Until I see it on the field, like, I can't definitively say that they're going to be anything better than like a 6-win team. Cleveland, look at their quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. No offensive talent outside of Jerry Jeudy. Defensively, they took a big step back last year. And in what was a prime opportunity to trade away Myles Garrett and get a lot of draft capital in return and just embrace a full-on rebuild, they decided to keep Myles Garrett, pay him a bunch of money, and still win 5 games tops. So organizationally, they're not doing anything that makes sense right now. And it looks like they're going to be stuck drafting in the top 10 again. And then the Indianapolis Colts are our final team where roster-wise, like, that's a fine roster. solid receivers, solid defense. Quarterback-wise, it's a mess. I'm not buying into Daniel Jones. I'm not buying into Anthony Richardson, and that is going to absolutely nosedive any chance that they have of being a good football team. And so there you have it. 6 tiers of NFL teams ahead of the 2025 NFL season. And if you aren't subscribed on the YouTube channel, please be sure to do so. I want to say we're approaching 2.1K subscribers. Would love to get to 3,000 before the end of the regular season. That's kind of the hard goal I've set for the channel. If you're listening as a podcast, again, be sure to leave a review, do all that fun podcast stuff, and keep up with everything going on. Later on in the week, we're going to have Aaron Schatz, the great Aaron Schatz, my good friend Aaron Schatz, from FTN to talk all things 2025 football almanac, one of the best times of the year's almanac season. If you are able to get the almanac, please be sure to do so. It'll make you a smarter analyst, a smarter fan. You can get that at ftnfantasy.com to buy Aaron Schatz's 2025 football almanac. I have a copy of it, and every year, it makes you a smarter fan, full of tons of insight, whether it be gambling, fantasy, or just analyst purposes. It has everything that you could want. So please, please, please go and buy Aaron Schatz's 2025 football almanac. He will be on this very program on Wednesday to talk about his projections around the NFL. Also later on, RJ Ochoa, my colleague from SB Nation, who covers the Dallas Cowboys, he will be on to talk all things Dallas with me. So that'll be a lot of fun as well. And again, be sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow along wherever you get your podcasts for all of these shows coming up. Appreciate everybody for tuning in as always. We'll talk to you very soon on The Pump Fake.